friends, and welcome to the Spectrum Stitch Swoncho. In this video, we are going to talk about your gauge swatch. Now, working on a wearable like this, it is extremely important that you do a gauge swatch, both with the yarn you plan on using and the hook you plan on using. What we are going to do is attempt to get our stitches to be the exact same size as the stitches in the pattern. By doing this, we will ensure that our Swoncho will actually fit, okay? Now, if we have to adjust our hook size to get gauge, that is absolutely okay. If we have to adjust our hook size 2 or 3 different sizes, like go up 3 sizes or down 3 sizes, that's absolutely okay. What I want you to take away from this is the most important part of getting a gauge swatch is that our stitches are the correct measurement. It doesn't matter what size tool you get it to that measurement, it just matters that you get to that measurement. Now, for this Swoncho, we used a split single crochet, which can easily get made too tight if we are not careful. So it's important that you do a gauge swatch using the split single crochet, and the gauge stitch count that I gave you of 16 stitches over 4 inches is worked over a split single crochet. So when we do split single crochet, we have to work them in the round. So the first thing I'm going to have you do is grab the main color of your Swoncho. We're going to work up our gauge swatch using that main color, and I want you to grab the hook you plan on using for your Swoncho. And let's start with a gauge swatch. The reason I'm having you use the main color is because that is the color we have the most of when it comes to all of the yarn. Go ahead and place a slip knot directly onto your hook, and let's go ahead and chain 30 chains. Once we get our 30 chains, we want to go ahead and join to work in the round. And when we do this, you do want to make sure that you do not twist your chains. And then I'm just going to join with a slip stitch to the first chain, okay? The good news is you won't have to be working into chains when we're doing our Swoncho, but for this swatch, we have to. So I'm just joining with a slip stitch. Now, this very first round of stitches we put in the chain is a round of single crochet. So let's go ahead and we will chain 1. And when we do this round of single crochets, we are going to set up for our split single crochet round. So go into that first chain where you did your slip stitch. And normally you would just pull up that first loop, make sure it's the same size as your hook, and just kind of make it parallel and complete it, right? Well, here's what's going to be different as we're working the split singles and the singles. That first loop, we need to extend it up. We need to make sure that it is nice and long, okay? Now, I'm using an H hook to do this, but if you're struggling to get this loop to be the right size, you can change to different size hooks because obviously the hook themselves are going to be bigger and it will help you get a bigger first part of the stitch. But that first pull up, that's the most important. And because we pull it up nice and large like that, we're going to get sort of a nice fluffy stitch there, okay? It's not going to be very tight. And then we have to do it again into the next chain. So go to the next chain, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then extend it up. What I tend to do is I end up putting my hook almost like it's vertical, and then I yarn over and pull through. I also make sure as I'm doing these that I am not holding my yarn itself over here too tight, because you could hold this really tight and it puts a lot of tension on the yarn on your hook. So you want to make sure you're not holding it very tight, that you're allowing the yarn to essentially breathe and become a nice, fluffy, larger stitch. All right. If you hold that yarn too tight, okay, watch this. If I hold this yarn, my working yarn, if I hold it too tight and I pull up here and I yarn over and pull through, it condenses down too much because it was too tight to begin with. Okay. So you just want to make sure that you have a nice, comfortable, relaxed feel on your yarn. In your working hand, make sure that first loop is pulled up and then create your single crochets. You will know in the following round if you did not make your single crochets loose enough. And you will know that because when we go back into these stitches to complete our split single crochet, it will be really hard. Okay. So you will know very quickly if these are too tight. Let's go ahead and I want you to get all the way around with just these single crochets. Once you get all the way around, we're going to go ahead and we're going to join in the same manner that we will be joining on the Swoncho. So I want you to extend that loop that's on your hook and take your hook out. Come over here and into the top of the single crochet that you've started with. Put your hook in coming from back to front. Grab that loop that you had on your hook and we're going to pull it over here and place it back onto the hook. And we're going to pull that through. Okay. So I've just done what's called an invisible join. Now, as I continue on here, typically you would chain one and then continue on. I am not going to have you chain one. Okay. So the yarn on our hook, we're just going to leave that as is. And now we're going to jump right into our split single crochet. Okay. The reason I'm doing that is if we chain one, we tend to get a gap right here between our join. And I don't want to have that when we're doing our color work later on. So right here, can you see the base of the single crochet right there? It looks like it's a V. Can you see it's like between my two thumbs? We want to place our hook directly in between these two legs of the V. So we're going to go right between and pierce right through that stitch. Okay. Right through that stitch. Yarn over our hook, pull that yarn over up. Okay. So you can see now that yarn over is pulled up right between those two legs of that V. And again, this first yarn over that we have pulled up, we want to give it an extended pull and complete your single crochet. So now I'm just going to keep going all the way around here, extending up and creating these split single crochets. Going to get very comfortable. If you find you are struggling to get into your first row of single crochets, chances are you made them way too tight. Okay. It is very important that you make them nice and loose. And if you're struggling with this part of pulling up the loop and then extending it up, change your hook size. Like it's okay. You want to go up one hook size? We could go up one hook size. And that allows it, like you could, like maybe you're only pulling up like here. Well, that allows me to have a little bit of extra room here because my hook is taking up some of that volume, right? So I can change my hook size, pull up my loop. Let me get some more yarn here real quick. Pull up my loop, yarn over, pull through. You can see I'm maintaining the stitch to be the exact same stitch as the others. See? And if that's still a struggle, like you could even go up one more hook size. And this is fine. This is totally fine to go up multiple hook sizes. You're going to be okay. The most important thing is we want our stitches to be the right size. Now you notice as I go up to this hook size, I don't have to pull up as much, right? Because I'm not pulling up as much with my hook, but the amount of the loop that's getting pulled up is the same. It's just the hook is filling up a lot of that space, right? So you can see here, watch. All of my stitches are still the same size. Can you see that? So you could use the H hook. Like I use the H hook and I just became very consistent with pulling up my loop, but going up a different hook size and getting the gauge, that's totally fine. Like that's absolutely okay. Let's get all the way around to the end here. We're going to join with our invisible join again. And then I'm going to have you work a couple more rounds of this. And you're going to measure for your gauge, okay? Pull my loop over, pull my hook through, And then I'm just going to chain one and go like this. And you can see here, I kept them nice and uniform. All of the split single crochets are stacked on top of one another. Okay. Can you see that? They are nice. I have a nice stretchy fabric, not super stretchy, but it's not like solid, right? And it has a nice stretch this way. Okay. That's important. All right. It's at this point we're going to grab our tape measure and we're going to see if we have 4 stitches per inch, okay? Of course, it's going to be easier to have a gauge over a larger area. And when we start our Swoncho, we will be measuring our Swoncho as we go to make sure that we're having the correct size, that we're making the correct size. But this is a good place to start so that you know what hook size is best for you to use. And it's good practice for you to do that split single crochet for when it's time. And grab your gauge check. Now you could just use a plain tape measure or a gauge check like this where it has an opening right here over 2 inches. And we want 4 stitches per inch, which means we want 8 stitches over our opening. So I'm going to rest this right up against my work and then set it down. And then let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I have 8 stitches over 2 inches, which is perfect. That's what I want. I want 16 over 4 inches. Now I'm more concerned about my row gauge. My stitch gauge versus my row gauge. This, I just want to make sure that it is not too tight, right? I don't want this to be too tight. Can you see how flexible this is versus this one down here? I had the color work here and I started getting way too tight. Like I just don't have any give, right? But you can see these are looser than these down here, right? So these here, they match more of what I had up here, which is what I had. And then I was like, oh, I'm getting real comfortable. And I just got way too tight. So we do not want this. This is not good. All right. So as you are working on your little swatch here, you do want to make sure all of your stitches look very uniform. You want them to look very uniform. Okay. They should just be nice and comfortable. They should look kind of like they're fluffy, like the yarn itself is allowed to breathe and be a little bit fluffy. What I want you to do once you finish your gauge swatch, I do not want you to rip it out. Take your yarn that you have here, like you should have several balls of this swish, and just like set this aside. You could put a stitch marker in it if you want to hold the loop so it doesn't go anywhere. And the reason I don't want you to rip it out yet is because as we are working on our Swoncho, just like I was able to take this and measure it against this, it allows you to have, oh, look, this is what I got gauge with this. Let's kind of match it up to what we're working with. And it's just a nice little tool to have. Plus, if we don't cut this off, then we have this yarn we could use. And then if we rip it out, then we don't have any of the information before that we could have used, right? So I'm just kind of setting this aside just so that I have it for later. And then I will end up using this ball of yarn, for the base of the Swoncho, if this is your main color of your Swoncho, but it's there ready for you, okay? And there you have it. That's how I want you to do your split single crochet gauge swatch. And we're just going to use one color for this swatch because as we are working along with multiple colors, we are going to do our best to make sure that we are doing those split single crochets and worked around just the stitch, not any extra fluff or any extra float that is going on with our Swoncho. And that will allow you to make sure that your Swoncho has some really nice drape. Now remember, you can use any hook for your project, okay? The gauge is the most important. So I used an H hook because I got a nice gauge with my H hook, but you saw that I could have switched to a J hook. This is a 6mm J hook, and I could have gotten that gauge, right? And it's all because I'm not really using the barrel of my hook, the size of my hook here as what I compute my gauge for. I'm lifting it up that first loop larger than the size of my hook. That's why I could change hook sizes no matter what. All right. So you just find the hook size that works best for you to allow you to consistently get the correct size stitch, and you will be ready for the split single crochet section when we come to it. All right. That's it for gauge. Let's go ahead and move on to the next part.